Welcome everyone, welcome students. Grandmaster Dr. Thor Templar here, and we're going to guide you through a very important area of the occult sciences to clarify in what's considered scientific terminology the actual fields that I discussed in what the occult sciences deals with. Now, energy and fields are considered, when you talk about these things, are considered nebulous, just statements. What does that mean? What are the fields made of? That's not good enough for general scientific understanding. And I agree with that, and we should use terminology correct to understand what these, quote, for many years were called magical energies, etc. So what are they and what are they called, etc.? Well, the fields that surround you that we talk about, that you create and that you want to create magnetic field energies from, building these fields, those energies that surround you all the time. These energy fields are made up of what are called occultons. Now, occultons are a measurable, detectable, have subatomic mass to them. So, as so many things, it's very difficult when we get down into the quantum world, quantum meaning the lowest form of measurement that there is, to measure these things using primitive technology that scientists of the common world have. So they don't have the detectability equipment, not because it doesn't exist. They don't have it because it's not in their field of interest. Similar to when they didn't know what oxygen was or anything else that the scientists don't know, and then someday wake up to the fact that that's the reality of something. So occultons are this matter that is empowered, measured, can be projected, can be removed. So these are actual energy matter. It's not some spooky stuff out of the paranormal world. No, this is the real measurable energy fields made up of this particular occultons that are surrounding you all the time and form these physical and occult fields. We're talking mostly about occult fields, but everything starts in the occultons, and the occultons mix with the psions, P-S-I-O-N, psions, which are created from your mental capacities, these are the real energies that form everything. And this is very, very important to understand, that everything comes from this. Not, well, we use atoms and things and quantum fields and all. No. That's scientific babble. And there's plenty of that out there from all these theoretical physicists. And that's what it is, that, well, we will call something this because we can't figure it out. They've never seen a black hole, so they really don't know if they even exist. These are theories of why certain things happen, just like everything else that science put out. Most of it they've never even seen. We haven't even had good pictures of space except in the last 3 or 4 years, as as the Hubble telescope and other things have been used. And why we don't have more of these, and why we don't have more space probes going up all the time. We should have hundreds, if not thousands, of them up in space, examining every square inch. So we really don't know, and we don't understand what's in space. And what happens when we sent all these probes up there, and of course you don't hear about it because you don't really look into it. Again, this information is not hidden. Oh, it's a conspiracy. No, the conspiracy is that you're watching the Big Bang Theory about, how many nerds are there? 4 or 5 nerds there who complain that they don't make enough money with high advanced degrees. They have to live together in apartments. One guy's having a baby. I can't. How am I going to afford to have a baby? I mean, we're just scientists. Oh, good God. So the idea is that that's about as great as, let's use an older term, Al Bundy, who was a shoe salesman who was able to own a fairly large home. But it's just amusing. So the whole idea is that these theoretical nonsense, everything comes in the occult sciences. The occult originated science, blended it with real science, and then what happened is when the occult sciences were originally hijacked by religion and condemned because it started to make the world make sense without the religious leaders getting cut in, getting their power, getting their sex, getting their money by the buckets full, because that's what it's all about. So when they cut in on that because they didn't like what the occult sciences were saying and hijacked it, making the world into a Disneyland of stupidity with talking animals and gods coming out of the sky doing absolutely nothing. So the whole idea is that once you get into all those things, you understand where the basis of things come from. What happened then is that a group started up to counter this, which was headed mostly by occult scientists, or at least the people that were then at those particular times. They basically were still all occult scientists. Of course, they had lost a lot of their knowledge, and they started to push science against religion. When there really should be a synergy of spiritual. Religion has no purpose whatsoever, and neither does stupid science. And if we live in stupid science, we'll never get anywhere. And if we live in stupid religion, we're never going to get anywhere. If we live in occult science and we live in spiritualism, we will rise to the highest potential that mankind can. But that is not in the plans for a society that is only interested in sex, money, and power. So that's when the two broke off, and it's really unfortunate, and it's been a problem since then because science is very closed-minded, and those who are kind of stupid and religious want to hold on to the science that they dearly love, the 500-600-year-old Newtonian physics and all the old stuff, which has a value on a certain level. It's like everything else. Basically, car tires haven't changed since their invention. Yeah, they're steel belted now, they're different things, but the car tire functions pretty much the same, and while there are certain advancement in tire technology, ultimately it's pretty much all the same that it has been since, probably for the last 100 years at least, if not the last 60 years, where there's virtually no changes. Some tires are better than others, blah, blah, blah. We don't know that for sure. Certainly the higher priced tires certainly tell you that, but we don't really know that. But the whole idea is that tires are pretty much the same. So you don't want to, when you're building a car, throw out the tires and say, well, I'm going to come up with an entirely new thing based on other concepts. It's really not needed. It's, reinventing the wheel, as the old cliche goes. But the car itself has radically changed in so many areas, even though it's substantially the same as a car's always been a car. You sit in it, so forth. But there's all sorts of gadget budgets and convenient riding and safety features and sitting and panels and all the things that cars are now really run by little computers. So the whole idea is there is quite a difference there as you move on. But the tires are the same. So the whole idea is that old science at its primitive level has value. This is this compound is that, to a degree. But if you get stuck in that, then you get stuck in the reason why we have so little really happening now. So when this happened, the occult sciences, and then as stages went on and occultism decayed because of the lack of proper guilds, guilds are institutions that carry on knowledge and train people properly. Anyone particularly taking this course has read the handbook, and one of the important things in the handbook that people probably skim by is what a guild is. And it's important to understand what a guild is. Now, a guild has been defined there, so I won't go into it. But basically, I mean, it's an organization where people are taken in that have particular interest and trained and educated in that skill. So it's just not it's a difference between hiring a handyman to do something and a skilled carpenter from, let's say, your local union or something. It's assumed that that carpenter at that local union knows what they're doing and has been trained and has been a journeyman for years, etc., etc. So, I mean, there are reasons for these terminologies and reasons for guilds, and when you lose that, when you get a bunch of book-reading, self-appointed experts, which is what occultism is all about, who maybe went to some goofball Crowleyite school, or a demon taught them, oh, I know so much. You've got a pretty messed up area of study. So that's why the occult sciences are so special, is that we rise above all those trash, worthless, informationally void liars and really just hucksters that are selling you stuff that their lives certainly don't reflect any empowerment whatsoever. And this is, can go on with the entire, what have any of these people done? But I've talked about that before. But, so the whole idea is that that's what's so important about a guild. And when that decayed, all this got lost and things got shattered into the non-religious types who went to science and the goofballs, they're both goofballs who went into the religion, mostly probably to hide or make money. So this is where everything gets split up. So getting back to the main understanding here, but all these issues are very important. You've got to know what's going on in the world and understand that. So occultons are this actual energy, wave, particle, whichever you want to call them. When you get down into subatomic particles or subatomic energies in general, things go from waves to particles to this very difficultly but yet can be measured fields that act in ways that are very different from your common fields. But the one thing it has in common is that all structure of anything, a thought, a mental projection, a stone, a pill, a duck, all start at the occulton level. So that's what creates that, and that matter changes. But within that matter, that can be looked at in a scientific manner as a particular type of field that they want to talk about, a particular type of particle or wave. And of course, it has to have a quantum. It has to be able to be measured. And it can be measured. And if I had the hundreds of millions of dollars that, or the billions that cancer research has had to achieve nothing, then I would be able to show you these more direct measuring devices. But they're there and you can do it, and you can do it through the interaction of the process of using these fields that you have in general. You can use the fields to measure their own fields and their own energies. Because that's how the subatomic world works. But these are not some undefinable, unmeasurable, mass or whatever it is. It has to have some substance to it. And of course, that substance is debatable of how these things have to have something to them in a scientist way. But the point is they are there, they are real, and they can be measured. They can be amplified, they can be projected, they can be removed. But they make up the matter of everything. They create the essence of everything that then moves into its either physical component greater, or its non-physical component, like an emotion, or a prosperity field, or a luck field, or a charisma field. All these are occulton fields that and are made up of these occultons. Just like people say things are made up of subatomic particles. Well, subatomic particles are occultons. Now, the subatomic particles generated through occult practices that are mind-based are called psions. So, PSI So the psion is what's created through when you think, and energies combine with the mind and the inner magical being get together and they create psion. So it's very, very important that you understand these two actual substances, because they're substances. We have to get down to the fact that these are measurable things. These aren't, as I said, elusive ghost beings. So this is what makes up these occult fields. So when you're looking at someone's prosperity field, or you're looking at somebody's manifesting fields, you're looking at the occulton energy fields. And how strong are those fields? And again, as I said, these can be manifested. You can add to these fields. So this is matter that you bring together to create this, that are naturally occurring, and everything on this plane are made up of these things. So, that's where the essence starts from. So it's very important to know that something has to come from something. So it isn't that these are afterthoughts. It is that the fact that this is the essence. You could say when the universe was created, the first energy form, the first matter that was there, was occultons. They create everything. They create all the physical, all the non-physical as well. Because there's more than just a meat package like you are. There's more than just a physical substance of something. There's an energy field that is within that is active and growing and has created that to begin with. And these are occultons. So the mind, when it, as I said, when it combines with the inner magical being to affect occultons and to, in general, to affect these energies and these particles, these waves, because they change into many different things, but the energy is there in real, and that's all you need to know. But whether it's a particle or a wave or whatever it is at that particular time, which science likes to get things down to, well, we all know that particles and waves can change all the time. And it's been proven in regular scientists that things that are thought to be particles can turn into waves and vice versa. So that they change as they feel like it based on the subatomic reality of the world. And that this has been substantiated 100%. So the psions interact with the occultons to actually now mold, create, add to, bring in. So they actually, the psions, you start controlling the occultons with in many ways. It could be done through rituals. It could be done through using occult practices, whether it's candles, oils. You could say that the Grand Master All-Purpose Bag is a psion tool. Create psions that connect you to occultons. So understanding this verbiage and having this verbiage is very important, because that's how the, quote, scientific world works. And this is not playing their game. Remember, it's the occult sciences that came first. But we do like to explain things past witches and spells and goblins and ghouls, because, that's not what the occult science is all about. Well, those may be fun, and of course they were using all these energies. That's what a witch generates. They generate psions and affecting cultons, and that's how it works. But they never discuss it that way, because, what about the witches' spells? Well, that's not what the occult science is all about. So, when you use those things, you downgrade yourself to comic book worlds, and as such, you lose credibility in general. And it's not just credibility we care about what science thinks or the general public. It's just a way of communicating things that are of value in a more proper way. I mean, words and way things are represented are very important. It's like the packaging of a product. If a product can be wonderful, but if it's in a bad package, it doesn't look right, or nobody wants it. You put a piece of garbage in a fancy package and you sell it. So, the whole idea is that things need to be understood on these levels and communicated because a certain segment of society will, of course, all of those dumb bunkers will go back to scientific verbiage to put you down or not. So will other people as well, and they've done this for long periods of time. Stating things that are totally incorrect, like there's never been any research and so forth. But now we're giving you exactly what these fields are. So if someone was to say, what are these fields? Well, these fields are Occultons, which intermix with Psions from your own consciousness. Basically coming from your consciousness. It's a consciousness field energy, which is partly mind-generated and partly brain-generated. And you've got to understand what the mind, the brain, and consciousness is, and of course we're going to go over that in another lecture. So these actual energy fields, these particle wave energies, that's what these things are made up of. So it's very important to understand that. And of course, as I said, these things are measurable. They're measurable today. They're measurable right now by skilled scientists who know how to do it. And even by most individuals with a medium amount of training. So, as we move into all these things, to clarify the view of the occult scientists, so you understand where you're coming from, these type of terms clarify things. It's the difference between calling something astral projection and calling it remote viewing. Now, remote viewing, the most boring, the most common people who seek some sort of metaphysical science grab onto is that this isn't occultism, this is science. Well, this is what they say, but if you use the term astral projection, people would have all sorts of problems with that. Oh, that witchy stuff. So, terminology is important when you're explaining things, and even for your own understanding. It's foolish to be caught in a particular phrasing that puts you at a low level when there's far more to the occult scientist than that. An occult scientist is not a witch. We are not sorcerers per se. I mean, the occult scientist uses sorcery as a term to delineate itself from witchcraft, which is thought of as goofy and is magically religious. So there's a lot of religious overtones to a lot of witchcraft, which is particularly Wicca. Sorcery is a term that doesn't connect to religion. It has some negative overtones by common society, but that's their problem. But it denotes something that is non-religious. So we use that terminology at this particular time. But basically, again, we're not throwing out the baby with the bathwater. The old sorcery technology is excellent and is used. But terminology of describing all these things shouldn't be spells and rituals and other things. That, again, puts someone. You use the word spell or psychic and you're an idiot. That's how people think. So there's no use opening that up, but again, I'm not overly concerned with general society because, look at what they've created. They've taken a paradise and made a toilet bowl out of it, and then they've made sure that toilet bowl is the most horrible place possible. And of course, since they have their very primitive means, they even make things that are complete and totally toxic that will kill the entire toilet bowl that they created. Things like nuclear power and other things. So does that make any sense? So, we're not too concerned about what the toilet bowl, the ape man of society, the planet of the apes that we live on is actually thinking in the long run. But we do want to use terminology that people take us seriously and understand that we are serious thinkers, and this is the correct way to look at occultism in general. Those offshoots of the occult sciences, which is what all occultism is. So if you're a ritual magician or into voodoo, whatever, these are all offshoots of the occult sciences that were downgraded from the great guilds and mystery schools to go into primitive tribal understandings where everything was made into woo-woo. So when you are talking about building an occult energy field, you're talking about building the occultons of that. So if you want to draw more success to you, it's the success occultons. And you're using your psions to assist the practice. So that's the common terminology. If you don't describe something as measurable matter, then it isn't scientific because there's nothing there. And if there's nothing there, then nothing exists. But we all know that, what is physical in the mind of science is not really the reality. Until we had powerful microscopes, nobody knew what all these other things were, even though the Greeks stated what the atom were before anybody even knew about it, which is quite interesting. So apparently, this came from the ancient mystery schools, which Greece had many of, and even up to relatively modern terms, whatever that goes back when they talked about this, how many thousands of years that is. So we've talked about this, and there has to be a structure to something. It can't be just this field. This field means nothing in a bigger picture. So they're occulton. They're made up of occultons. Just as simple as that. And really, people may think that's a strange word. It's actually a perfect one. Occult means hidden. So these are kind of hidden fields to science, and they're difficult to produce and so forth, but obviously you can. And, again, they're measurable, they're producible. You can, like any type of matter, no matter what it is, it can be controlled to some degree and measured, etc. Just like tachyons and neutrinos, all these things that work in their own realities, all can be measured and detected to some degree. So, as an occult scientist, you need to understand that. You need to understand that the mix of the psions created through the consciousness and brain activity, these are, again, measurable physical energies, waves or particles, however they need to manifest to affect that particular area, is how they're produced. Just like all the other energies that they tell you it exists that we've really never seen except in books, and all the other areas that are totally unclear, and how science knows so much and can really do so little. With all the written material coming from particularly medical science and the, hundreds of millions of books that have been written now and papers, at least many, many millions. And but there's absolutely no connection between the information and them achieving anything with it. So you have to say, well, then I guess that information is in great question. Because, you have all these answers of what it is, but you can't do anything about it. Cancer is a prime example of that. Well, everybody knows what cancer is, but they really don't know what cancer is. But they're going to tell you they do. So the actual process that goes on here of these energies that energy fields are created from this particular matter, and that matter is an occulton, mixed oftentimes with psions, which affect the occultons and help amplify and so forth and so on. So it's really just as simple as that. So, but it's very important that that you understand that's what these fields are made of. And you will be questioned on this because this is very, very important information that really the whole basis of the occult sciences are built on. Now, in the first lectures on this, we talked about the subatomic structure, but I didn't define what the subatomic particles are, these quantum physics, these quantum fields. But they are quantum fields, which means the lowest possible field of measurement is quantum. That's what quantum means. You need to know what that as well. So you need to sound intelligent if you talk with someone. You're not going to walk around as an occult scientist with a degree hanging around your neck and telling people that you got a degree if you can't explain these types of things. And this is the type of thing that I stress in the school, is that you understand this. to the level enough to intelligently discuss that. Because that's how scientific matters. So it has to be made of something, no matter how nebulous that may be. That's what it's made of. Just like all these other fields, they have names. A neutron, neutrinos are very mysterious things that were just discovered recently that penetrate and are everywhere, and they penetrate through all matter. They really don't follow any of the laws of physics. But they've been measured. There is something there. So they are a quantum field. Since they're measurable, it's a quantum energy, meaning the smallest measurement you can. So there are these different scales of measurement, and to a certain extent they get very primitive, but the bottom line is that these fields can be measured, can be amplified, can be projected, and moved and used like any matter can be, as the same with psions. You can do the same thing with psions. And that's the essence. That's more of the scientific understanding. Instead of just saying subatomic energy fields, which is kind of nebulous to some degree. But, these are energies that are not as defined as the stupid ABC science type things. But to define those, we're talking about these two specific energies. And this are the energies. So when we talk about occult energy fields, we're talking about fields that are made up of occultons. This can be prosperity, this can be love, this can be charisma. And why are certain people more, why do you feel you like that person? Why do you, and a lot of these people, I had a friend in particular who was a very charismatic guy. You like the guy. And he was able to manipulate a lot of people, and he was dirty and as evil as you could possibly get. So these are energy fields. They have nothing to do with good, bad, or anything else. That's not scientific. Good and bad. I mean, it's judgmental what is good and what is bad, and what is just the way it is. I mean, hemlock is poison. Is that good?
Well, I wouldn't say hemlock's good.
Oh, then it's bad.
Well, yeah, it's bad. It's a poison that kills you.
Well, it's not bad. That's its makeup. I wouldn't recommend eating it. But it wasn't designed to be it. So it's not good or bad. That's the way it is. So you got to be very careful of putting values on things as well in many areas. Of course, there is universal law, which determines, intergalactic law, that determines what is good or bad on a more social level. But some things are just there. That's the way it is. They're not good and bad. There's nothing good or bad about hemlock. It's just hemlock is there. And I'm sure it serves some purpose, for positive purpose for something, but it wasn't meant to be eaten. And as a poison, it's even used in certain preparations. So, in tiny amounts, obviously. So the whole idea is that in quantum amounts. So, in one way of understanding that, the occulton field, it could be described particularly in homeopathy, where homeopathy takes something that's more physical and breaks it down to its original type level, its occulton level. And it is claimed that the more you break it down, the more it becomes stronger, because it's getting down to that purer level, so to speak. And of course, that isn't true to, there is diminishing returns there, and I don't want to get too much caught into homeopathies. It's a whole nother subject unto itself. But that's how you have to look at things in terms of an occult scientist. That's what you're looking at. So if a field, when you're checking somebody's field for prosperity or manifestation abilities, all of this is in a subatomic energy field made up of occultons. So that's what you're measuring when you measure that particular field. And we do this all the time with people when we measure their health fields, their manifesting fields. We check to see if there are disruptive fields in there, curses and cross conditions. These are all This is all how energy is wound into the occultons and has infected them to operate on a negative level. And again, if they didn't exist, you wouldn't be able to measure them. And measuring everything is important. Is this field, do you have a curse? What level are you crossed to? What is your manifesting level? And there are high levels and low levels. If you check the manifesting levels, the occultons for success and successful people, you'll find out that they all have a level that is 8s and 9s and 10s, while the average person is usually down to a 3 or 4. So, this is the difference, and the whole idea is this is measurable, because that's what you're measuring. And this is a real physical energy that's out there. So, it is quantifiable, meaning it can be measured. So, and that's very, very important. And so are psions. Psions can be measured as well, and that's part of the process. Now, understanding this in particular is something that this is a one of the audios, which I'll be ending here now. You need to listen to and re-listen to often so you get this point. So you understand that anything that's real has matter to it and can be measured. So if subatomic cult energies are measurable, which they are, then what are they made up of? That's what science would tell you. Well, they're made up of occultons. Plain and simple. It's not complicated. Science does this all the time. They pick words out of their proverbial butt and tell you that this is the way it is. And what people don't understand is, Einstein was a theoretical physicist. Well, maybe this happens. Maybe this happens. And all of science is based on theoretical physics. The old Big Bang TV series, Sheldon is a theoretical physicist, meaning he makes up stuff that maybe could be right. Oftentimes is completely wrong. I mean, Einstein's entire philosophies and understandings have been proven to be wrong. Things move faster than the speed of light, period. This has been proven even by the scientists out there today. So, plain and simple, there are things that have been done to prove this in regular science, not through occult sciences, that have proven all this stuff is nonsense. And you need to know that as well. And of course, some people, the old-time scientists, still argue that. But the quantum physics, where things are changeable, movable, and difficult to measure, but change the types of energies they are, from waves to particles to everything else, is now accepted, and the principles of that are applied in most technology we have today. So there is this changeable, this conscious base, which a lot of psion energy there as well. Meaning the fact when the observer or the participant observes the process, they become involved in it and they change the energy fields. So here we go again, proving occultons that and psions, the fact that when psions are put into work, meaning you thinking, projecting, and you are, all the fields that they tell you don't exist are all the things that you are made up of originally. These have been closed off for a number of reasons. The minute the psions come in there, they mess up everything that's already been established as pure science. And this has been proven again, time and time again. The observer affects the actual experiment. So, this is very critical to understand as well, and that's part of common science. I didn't make that up. It doesn't come from my research. This is standard science, and has been proven time and time again. So, the concept of this, of that,
well, magical field, what the hell is that? It's in your head, you dumb witch.
is complete nonsense. There are these measurable fields. I've repeated this many, many times so you get it in your head, because that's what people are going to say. Well, how do you know? How can you do a reading on somebody? How can you well, that's exactly how I do it. I'm measuring the occultons, which are connected to these energy fields, which make up these energy fields, to judge their strength and capacities. And you can do this for any area of life. It's similar to what you would call an occult blood test. Now, you can get a blood test, and they're going to check certain substances in your body, how your kidneys are working, how there's different minerals and hormones. Well, these are very physically measurable things through a machine where they're testing chemical makeup. Now, when you get into the subatomic quantum occulton world, there is ways of measuring this. They're just not done by a machine quite yet. But as I said, if I had the millions and millions of dollars that all these people had, there would be a way of that. And you could probably do it with a blood test and figure out the energy field that's emitting the occultons in there for that particular structure. But, it's a very, very complicated process, while blood tests basically are not a complicated process with today's technology and everything else. So there are ways of measuring these things, but when you're getting into such advanced energy fields, it takes a very advanced scientist to be able to work with these. So, and this goes with lots of things. There are different scientists in different fields, and you certainly don't want an engineer. And a lot of times people think engineers are scientists. They're not. Engineering is, I don't know if that's in the sciences. I guess it is. But engineering is engineering. It's not physics. It's not so many other things. So engineers are engineers. You're studying something very different than what's considered science. If you're an engineer, you're an engineer. You're not a scientist. So this is where we get into all these things which tend to be confusing and everything else. But, the regular, common, stupid world wants to tell you a whole bunch of stuff, and you need to answer them in the proper form. So what I've given you, there's no argument to. They can make up whatever they want and say that is the way it is. That's the energy there. That's what's measured. That's what's projected. That's what is controlled. And there it is. So it has nothing to do with some nebulous witchcrafty ritual, spells, all these other words which, when you start getting into, are society-based no-nos, psychic. I mean, all these things have been brought down to comic book characters, to Harry Potter, to something that doesn't exist and probably is evil. So the whole idea is that you don't really want to use that terminology as a general rule. And that's not the fact just for common world. It's the whole idea is we need to clean up occultism in general. And as such, we need to start using better terminology. I mean, remote viewing became so large with the public because of that term, instead of astral projecting, which has been around for 70 years of the lousy 30 years that remote viewing has been around, if that long. But the fact that and the remote viewers, the military morons, when they start bringing in people that were, quote, witches and other things, flipped out. And this was what they said destroyed the problem, destroyed the entire program, was when they started bringing in, hardcore occultists and tarot card readers and all these other people. This they objected, yet they were doing occult practices all the time. But, it's the image, and I'm assuming they brought in these kind of people that were, again, strange, odd types that occultists are. And what this does is it makes the whole field look poor. While these really pig-headed, low-level morons that all military people are, accepted this as a scientific process because of the way it was presented to them and the term that was using. If they called this the psychic power empowerment, these people would have never given it any credit whatsoever. Yet what they were learning and what they were learning to do all is based in the occult sciences. So it's important to understand that. And it's important to represent things like that because that's what an occult scientist is. It is not steeped in old traditional language. It's not steeped in old traditional practices. It's a next level of occultism is what the occult sciences are. And it's a whole way of perceiving and dealing with the world that is measurable, that is predictable, that is amplifiable, and that changes your whole reality, your conscious reality, your subconscious reality, your physical reality. It changes everything when you understand how to use these energies. And that's the reality of the occult sciences that everyone needs to understand on a deep level and be able to express. So this is very important. So listen to this audio several times and get down the understanding of the particular fields and energies and how they work. As usual, if you have any questions, always contact me and I can go into greater detail or try and clarify something that you may not fully understand.